Ooh, later with Mo Kelly on KFI AM 640.
My final thought is going to be about crime. I had some thoughts earlier in the show. I said the first word was going to be Mayor Karen Bass, as she was releasing some of the crime stats and how they were, at least on the surface, positive or moving in the right direction. And I just want to offer just a little bit more perspective before the night is through. And it's not that I'm against her offering the crime stats, and there's no need to go over them again. And yes, the numbers were positive relative to 2023, and improvement is that. Improvement, I'll take it. Better is better. I'm not going to quibble about that. But by saying something is better, there also needs to be context, a point of reference. The easy response, or at least I call it easy, to any crime stat is pointing out the obvious, that crime stats only reflect crimes which have actually been reported. And that's in the past. That has nothing to do with the present or the future. It's not some sort of force field protection for the future. And since we know that crime stats are always relative to crime actually reported, and it's true for all crime stats, not just these crime stats. So let's not get bent out of shape or act like these today are somehow different just because they're positive. We can't just dismiss them out of hand. Let's be fair here. We're not going to say just because they're positive, well, they're fake. No, I'm not going to do that. Fewer murders and less violent crime, always good things. Let's agree on that. But let's not oversell it either. The real discussion is whether this is going to be a larger trend or just a temporary fluctuation. Liable to increase again next year? That's my question. Crime is a fickle thing. It depends largely on the willingness of people to follow or break the law. We as people have more influence on crime than actual law enforcement, and that has always been true. Something else about crime and safety. Safety is not, has not, and will not ever be connected to raw stats. You can tell me that murders are down 10%, and that really doesn't mean a damn thing in our everyday lives. Crime stats are not a predictor of the future. I will say it again and again and again. It's only a reference to the past. Murders being down 10% or whatever number doesn't make me, you, or your family feel any safer. And this is definitely about feelings. Nobody's going to walk outside and say, damn, I feel 10% safer. Or I feel 10% less likely to be murdered today. How about that? Because safety begins and ends with feelings. And safety is about trust. You know, I don't like to fly. And there are no stats that you can give me about flying being the safest way to travel, which is going to impact that fear. So you can save your breath. You just have to make me feel safe. That's all you can do. Here's another example. And Mark Ronner knows what I'm talking about. Mark and I have a shared dislike and apprehension of going to the dentist. The reason I am with my dentist right now is because he goes over and above to demonstrate he understands and relates to my fear. Doesn't talk down to me. Doesn't tell me why it's supposedly an irrational fear. Mayor Bass could learn something from that because she made no attempt to connect with us or demonstrated that she personally has the same safety concerns that the rest of us do collectively. Safety is 100% personal. Mayor Bass could announce that there were 0 murders next year and 0 property crime. But if you and I can't feel it, it means nothing. And I'm not going to change my behavior as to riding Metro, getting gas, buying groceries, walking my dogs because crime is down. That press conference today felt like it was coming from someone who did not share or understand my concerns, does not have to make those same choices, not make the same considerations, and ultimately does not have the same skin in the game as I do, as you do. And this is less about Mayor Bass because crime is not limited to the borders of LA City. Crime being down in the city of LA has 0 to do with crime in unincorporated LA and LA County. It's bigger than any boundary, and nobody drives from Gardena to LA or vice versa and thinks all of a sudden, oh my gosh, my safety quotient has changed. I guess it comes down to this as I close. People will not feel any differently about crime or whether it's going up or down until we feel that those elected to address it have to worry about it too, have the same concerns, as you and I do. Because until that changes, the stats will never matter, whether we believe them or not. For KFI AM 640, I'm Mo Kelly. And for my final thought this evening, I wanted to talk about the Democrats. And the general storyline of late is that the Democrats have hit their lowest level of popularity in a generation or ever, or something like that. Most of the stories are somewhere along those lines. Everybody hates Democrats. And if you ever listen to this show for any length of time, you would know I don't do polls or approval ratings. To me, they're a little different than asking someone if they're hungry or if they're ready to go to the gym or something. Polls don't tell you much, and they all change with time or the weather. But the Democrats as a party have been going through some things. I wouldn't call it puberty, but they've been going through some things. Voters have been voicing their displeasure with the DNC, its new leadership, and old leadership for that matter. Democrats inside the party have voiced their displeasure with the lack of strategy to respond to the Trump administration. And there are some high-profile members who have either left the party or called for House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries to step up and meet the moment, and for Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer to step down and call it a day. The latter, who is out on an almost canceled book tour, that's the only way I can describe it, which is now some sort of explanation tour, trying to tell his side of the story as to why he decided to go along with Republicans and vote for the continuing resolution to keep the government open. Today, he was a guest on The View, and this was his explanation.
Great. What were you thinking and why?
Okay. So look, I knew it was a difficult choice, and I knew that I'd get a lot of criticism for my choice. But I felt as a leader I had to do it. Here's why. The CR bill was bad, no question. And it allowed a slush fund, which allowed money to be pushed around.
Explain it for the people who don't know what
There's
CR means.
CR means continue the government spending.
Right.
A shutdown, the alternative is cut off the government spending. And here's what would happen if we cut off government spending. It would be devastation like we have never seen.
Worse than we're seeing now?
Much. Here's why. That's why I did it. I wasn't going to take this flack just for having a lot of fun. The bottom line is a government shutdown works like this. All government spending is stopped, all. And then the executive branch, Trump, Musk, DOGE, and this really evil man people don't know about, Vote, who's head of OMB, his name is Vote. And they could cut off anything they want simply by saying it's not essential. So, day 2, SNAP, food for poor kids, not essential. Day 4, mass transit, New York City subway and subways all over, not essential. Day 7, Medicaid, not essential. People don't need Medicaid. They should get their own health care. And this would happen over and over and over again, and there's no check.
In his explanation and reasoning is why the Democrats are rightly seen as dysfunctional. Whereas what Schumer said was factually accurate as to what happens during a shutdown, it's also a fact that nobody else in the damn party knew that that was going to be his play. The House stood in solidarity, obviously thinking that the Senate and Democratic caucus as a whole were in agreement. They weren't. Schumer's decision caught most of the party by surprise. Also, the nature of the shutdown is not new. Everyone should have known that's what's going to happen. Schumer acted like he had some last moment epiphany. He was not in possession of some secret knowledge. It was one of the few moments in which the Democrats could have demonstrated a united front and also forced Republicans to the table. But instead, the Democrats got nothing except clowned, and the Republicans got everything they wanted, with zero opposition, zero downside, publicly embarrassing Hakeem Jeffries and the party as a whole. A win-win-win-win-win. And although I don't personally care about polls, they do highlight how poorly the party handles its own messaging, creates a viable strategy, or connects with voters in a contemporary sense. They're not winning anybody over, not even Democrats. But here's something that the Republicans have mastered and the Democrats haven't even started practicing. The Republicans play to win, no matter the cost. Mitch McConnell didn't care that there was no constitutional precedent to hold up the Merrick Garland SCOTUS nomination because it was supposedly an election year. He did it because it was important to his party. He didn't mind seeming hypocritical by rushing through the Amy Coney Barrett SCOTUS nomination a week before a presidential election in the very next cycle. Why? because it was important to the party. And the fruits of those labors are continuing to shape America at this very moment. Republicans play the long game. Democrats have no long-range plan or strategy. Republicans play to win. Democrats play by the rules, or what they think are the rules. That's why Donald Trump can say, I don't care what the judges say, close quote, openly defy lawful rulings, and there be neither consequences nor a democratic response. But despite all that, here's what I believe the media has missed in the assessment of the Democratic Party, which is not to be confused with the Democrat Party, which doesn't exist. It's March of 2025. There are no elections to win or lose on the immediate horizon. You don't select a prom queen during the third week of school. Some of the hand-wringing is definitely overblown. That's another lesson the Dems could learn from the Republicans. Stop panicking. More than a year and a half before you have to worry about losing another election. I mean, you probably will, but at least you have time to prepare. Use it wisely. For KFI AM 640, I'm Mo Kelly. But for my final thought tonight, I wanted to give some updated comments about Tesla. Now, as Tesla stock has fallen in recent weeks, members of the board and an executive at Elon Musk's company have been selling off millions of dollars in stock. And this is according to filings with the SEC. Together, 4 top officers at the company have offloaded over $100 million in shares since early February. James Murdoch, yes, related to Rupert Murdoch, his son, and a board member since 2017, James Murdoch, that is, exercised a stock option and sold shares worth approximately $13 million, according to the SEC, regarding a filing back on March 10th, which coincided, take it however you want, coincided with the stock's largest single-day decline in 5 years. Here's the bigger picture. Tesla stock is headed toward a 9th straight weekly drop. And shares now have plummeted 53% from record highs back in mid-December. The Tesla protests, we all know about them. The vandalism, we all know about them. But they've been growing in recent days. And with the White House and DOJ signaling that such acts are to be considered, quote unquote, domestic terrorism. And if you're wondering whether Elon Musk is concerned, his public behavior suggests that he is absolutely concerned. In a Fox News interview this week, Musk offered the following, quote, "It's really come as quite a shock to me that there is this level of hatred and violence from the left. I always thought that Democrats were supposed to be the party of empathy and caring, and yet they are burning down cars, firebombing dealerships, firing bullets into dealerships, smashing up Teslas." Close quote. Whereas it's easy and reductionist to say that the boycott and vandalism are acts of political violence and specifically from, quote unquote, the Democrats, not so simple. The DOGE cuts cross all demographics and impact people registered to both parties. To suggest the anger over loss of jobs, benefits, and 401k valuations is only attached to registered Democrats, that may be politically expedient, but it would also be remarkably dishonest. I can promise you the sell-off of Tesla stock is not a Dem party thing. I can promise you that the veterans impacted and angered are likely not predominantly registered Dems. The DOGE cuts have been far too vast, far too wide, and deep to argue that the only angry people in the streets or anger against the Tesla brand are registered Dems. The only people who are committing violence are registered Dems. That defies explanation and mathematical logic. Now, I know it caters to your political worldview if you happen to be a Republican or a MAGA supporter, but it defies logic. Also, Elon Musk is not in any way attempting to endear himself to those most affected, either insulting them directly like Senator Mark Kelly, or more generally, railing against decency or empathy. He definitely can't have it both ways. I personally would never support and would never recommend violence or vandalism. Never. But I absolutely can understand and point to the catalysts which often lead to it. Musk also said, quote, "It turns out when you take away people's money that they are receiving fraudulently, they get very upset. They basically want to kill me because I'm stopping their fraud, and they want to hurt Tesla because we're stopping this terrible waste and corruption in the government. Well, I guess they're bad people. Bad people do bad things," close quote. Actually, I'm not sure if he meant that as an accusation or a confession, because that cuts both ways. But I digress. In any event, as I've said before, and I will say again, Elon Musk has not conducted any forensic audit or shown any proof of any fraud. He's listed fraud. He's alleged fraud, but he's never shown any proof. He's alleged fraud and required we take his word for it, while also avoiding touching any of his contracts with the federal government. But he will have to make a decision as to what's most important, and it's his to make. I can't make it for him, and no one can tell the richest man in the world what to do, so it's up to him. He can be an agent of Donald Trump and continue to ruin the people's professional and personal lives without justification, without evidence, without empathy, and deal with the social ramifications of such, or he can step down as president and CEO of Tesla for the sake of his investors and the future of the company. But he will not get the latitude of continuing with DOGE, mocking his detractors, placing blame elsewhere, and expecting that Tesla not pay a price for its association with him. There were already inspectors general to do exactly what DOGE claims to be doing right now. They literally are tasked with finding fraud, waste, and abuse. But also, there are official verification and execution processes for it to be done correctly, legally, and transparently. Elon Musk is not doing any of that. America and Americans have no responsibility or obligation to just take Elon Musk's word that he is ridding our government of waste, fraud, and abuse. And it's being done without favor or political preference. Nobody is obligated to take his word for it. Nor are we to cry tears over the struggles of Tesla while he mocks the very people he fired and their struggles. No empathy for me, none for thee. Fair is fair. For KFI AM 640, I'm Mo Kelly.